When the biblical character Daniel is pictured, he is often next to lions. Why is this? Who was this man? And why was he thrown into a lion's den? The story of Daniel is made up of 12 chapters, which are full of suspense, godly character, and beautiful evidence of God's faithful presence even in hard circumstances. Let's dive into one of the most famous stories of the Bible, Daniel in the lion's den. Daniel was a Jewish man who served as a high-ranking official in the king's court, but his colleagues resented his success and favor before the king. And so it is recorded in Daniel 6 that they created a plot by which Daniel's faith would land him in trouble with the law and would result in his death. When Daniel was punished for praying to God by being thrown into a den of lions, God miraculously spared his life by shutting the mouths of the lions. The name Daniel comes from the Hebrew translation, God is my judge. The meaning of Daniel's name is very appropriate for one who chose to please God rather than man. His attitude is similar to that of the Apostle Paul, who said, "For, am I now seeking the approval of man or of God? Or am I trying to please man? If I was still trying to please man, I would not be a servant of Christ." Believers can learn from these examples and say along with the parents who named Daniel, God is my judge. The biblical character Daniel was born into a noble family in Jerusalem, but was taken into captivity as a young man and was brought to Babylon. He and several other captives were selected as being young men, without any physical defect, good-looking, suitable for instruction in all wisdom, knowledgeable, perceptive, and capable of serving in the king's palace, and were trained for 3 years before officially beginning their jobs as servants. From their earliest days in Babylon, Daniel and his companions, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, were characterized by faithfulness in their duties and faithfulness to God. They began to serve in the king's court in every matter of wisdom and understanding that the king consulted them about. He found them 10 times better than all the diviner priests and mediums in his entire kingdom. Many years passed, and Daniel continued serving each king in succession and rising through the ranks. Eventually, he was appointed to a high administrative position in the kingdom, along with 2 others. But Daniel distinguished himself above the administrators because he had an extraordinary spirit, so the king planned to set him over the whole realm. The other administrators and those they managed felt resentful about Daniel's success, and so plotted to bring him down somehow, but they could find no charge or corruption, for he was trustworthy, and no negligence or corruption was found in him. And the plotters realized they would have to figure out a way to get the king to penalize Daniel for his faith. The plotting administrators went to the king and proposed a new law that no one could pray to any god except the king himself, and that anyone who broke this law would be thrown into a den of lions. The king signed the law, and Daniel continued faithfully with his habit of praying 3 times a day in front of the windows of his house, facing toward Jerusalem. The administrators caught him in the act, then went to the king to report on Daniel's newly illegal activity. The king was distressed because he cared and respected Daniel, but even he could not repeal a law that had already gone into effect. So down went Daniel into the lion's den, to what everyone assumed would be certain death. Though from an earthly perspective, Daniel's situation looked hopeless, he trusted God and was spared. After a night alive in the lion's den, Daniel emerged unharmed, telling the king, "My God sent his angel and shut the lions' mouths, and they have not harmed me, because I was found blameless before him." The king was overjoyed that Daniel was unharmed, He had realized that the other administrators had tricked him into making a law that would hurt Daniel. So he put into effect another law telling people to fear Daniel's God, saying, "I issue a decree that in all my royal dominion, people must tremble in fear before the God of Daniel. For he is the living God, and he endures forever. His kingdom will never be destroyed, and his dominion has no end. He rescues and delivers. He performs signs and wonders in the heavens and on the earth, for he has rescued Daniel from the power of the lions." His story encourages those who follow God to focus more on what God says about them rather than what others say about them. His deliverance shows believers that God is able to rescue us, even from the most impossible circumstances. And we can trust that sometimes those very impossible circumstances may be the means by which God's name is made known to others. There are many other things to know from Daniel's story, which is recorded over 12 chapters. The whole book is an edifying reading for anyone who wants to be faithful in their own work and wants to grow in their trust of God's faithfulness toward those who serve Him.